So, in recent light of the execution of Troy Davis, we're discussing whether the death penalty is right to be used.
I would just say that, you know, in the majority of these cases, like, the justice system, like, it only convicts people when the evidence is beyond reasonable doubt, and beyond that, like, there's redundancy in the legal system so that even if someone is convicted, for them to get an execution, the evidence has to be even more substantial. And furthermore, a death sentence in the United States particularly means years of appeal processes and redundancies to ensure that you're not executing the wrong person and you are actually executing someone who did commit the crime.
Well, I think the first thing to do is that capital punishment cases are incredibly exceptional. Like, it's less than 1% of homicide charges result in capital convictions. Also, those convictions are usually overturned because the sentence is overturned itself, or the person's exonerated, or they set a date for execution. So the main reason that people who are on death row die is because of natural causes.
I guess the question is, what is the role of the justice system in society? Is the justice system built on bringing justice, like perfect justice, or is it built on bringing rehabilitation and building a better society, keeping society safe, and also mending those who are essentially broken?
I think I agree. There's definitely a certain hypocrisy to a system that responds to someone who has killed somebody by killing them. It's like violence begets violence.
Justice is retributive. Like, for instance, that's why we throw people in cages and put them in jail. Like, our justice system is very much one of punishment. We're disgusted by what you've done.
You know, public opinion would turn against the justice system if it didn't have any element of retribution in it. If it was purely rehabilitation, and if the facilities they were in were comfortable and they were fed well, everything was focused on rehabilitation, there would be an outcry because they need to have that sense that a wrong has been corrected. And that only comes from retribution.
I agree. A crime should be punished, but is a death penalty a punishment? I mean, you're killing him. That's not an extended punishment. Sure, the death row itself is like pretty harmful to someone, but once they're dead, that's it. And of course, it's like ultimately a terrible thing to bestow upon someone, but they're not seeing what they've done to society as such.
Well, when they spend 20 years on death row, during which they can usually appeal it, so what they actually do is essentially serve a very long prison sentence and then probably not get executed. So that is essentially what happens in the most cases where there's a capital sentence, though that is not usually realised in any way. But what we're saying is that yeah, during that time, firstly, that ensures that it's not as fallible as it could be, so there are sort of safeguards against doubt, and that's within like 10 to 20 years say you spend on death row, and then at the end of that you will also face the sort of absolute justice of like,
yeah, I would just add, it's absolutely perfect. You know, it's like you were saying, like, is that the correct crime? But if you think about like the kind of crimes that normally warrant capital punishment, you know, it involves taking not maybe sometimes one life, but maybe sometimes lots of lives. Maybe it's affecting a lot of people. We're talking about terrorists. We're talking about mass murderers. And you know, this is just, it's the perfect fitting of crime to punishment. You know, it's like a life has been taken, or multiple lives have been taken, and one life is given back in exchange.
I don't see in countries that don't have the death penalty, like Australia, like Britain, a massive pro-death penalty movement.
Well, I would disagree when you consider that the most popular papers in the country are those which are the greatest proponents of incredibly retributive campaigns about justice, like The Sun, for instance, the Daily Mail. These are the things that, for instance, during the John Venables case, and sorry, the murder of Jamie Bulger, they had pictures of 10-year-old children saying, "Hang them from the highest tree." They said, "Are you happy now, you little?"
Capital punishment cases are at least 10 times more expensive.
I just wanted to pick up on one point you made earlier, which was about capital punishment being an expression of public disgust, and I wanted to know what you guys would think about that. Like,
I mean, these issues are inherently emotional, and in fact the idea that you can apply rationality and logic is in fact a fallacy, because you can't derive what is referred to in humane ethics as like an ought from an is.
It's not a black and white issue. Death penalty cases can never be 100% black and white.
A lot of mentalities tend to be very capricious. If you look at like the difference between the Troy Davis case and the Amanda Knox case, you know, it's like the justice system was doing its own thing, like making its own analysis, and the public would just be like, oh, we've already made up our minds, she did it.